Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Understanding the NEC 2023 Electrical Code. And now your hillbilly professor, Scott Sexton.
Thank you very much for that wonderful intro, my new assistant. So let's look right into the NFPA 70 2023 NEC Codebook. Open your books up. Let's look at Article 230 Services. Let's go over to 230.66. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how these things are supposed to be marked as far as their rating as a service equipment. NEC requires that as service equipment rated at 1,000 volts or less shall be marked to identify it as suitable for use as service equipment. All service equipment shall be listed or field evaluated. Basically, that means that it has to be listed through the UL listing, and that means that they have field tested these things. A visual look at this is basically it's got to be identified. The bottom line, it's got to be identified inside of the box that it is listed as suitable for use as a service equipment. And that's pretty much it. I have seen things, and here's the problem. What happens is an inspector will come up and look at your equipment, and he's going to be looking for a stamp in it that says, or a sticker of some sort that says it's listed as service rated equipment. And I've seen people make a mistake and get a piece of equipment that's not listed that way and not identified, and having to take a full piece of equipment out. And we're talking about not just a breaker, we're talking about a full enclosure, disconnect and everything. And it costs a lot of money for the contractor. Go on to talk about B, meter sockets. Meter sockets shall not be considered service equipment, but shall be listed and rated for the voltage and current rating of the service. Pretty simple, okay? There's an exception here. Meter sockets supplied by and under the exclusion control of utility company shall not be required to be listed. So if you're buying it off the shelf from a supplier, which you can do, they've got to be listed and rated. Next thing, let's talk about surge protection. It's something that they have done some requirements over the last 15 years or 18 years where you've got to have surge equipment in some areas. So 230.67 surge protection. Follow with me. I know this is kind of still dry. Surge protected devices, all services supplying the following occupancies shall be provided with a surge protected device, an SPD. Anything that's got a dwelling unit, dormitory units, guest rooms and guest suites of hotels and motels, and areas of nursing homes and limited care facilities used exclusively as patient sleeping rooms. B on this, it says the SPD shall be integral part of the service equipment or shall be located immediately adjacent thereto. That means if it's not built into it on a big piece of gear and you're doing an add-on and bringing it up to code where you put a surge protected device, it's got to be right there attached to the panel or very close to it. Type C, the SPD shall be type 1 or type 2 SPD, and that's just the types of the types of what they are. When service equipment is replaced, all the requirements of this section shall apply. So, if you have an old piece of gear that's been in service before this actually played, you don't have to bring it up to date unless you have to replace that equipment, and that's what that means. SPD shall have a nominal discharge current rating and not less than 10,000 KA. It's talking about taking that surge and being able to take at least a 10,000 killiamp surge. So what is this right here? Basically a surge protection device. Here's an example of what one of them looks like. These things will be connected right here directly to the breaker closest to the main breaker in your service. It'll also be bonded to your grounding electrode system. That's how it's actually going to discharge some of that and protect your other equipment. All services supplying dwelling units shall be provided with a surge protected device. And there's a picture of it. Kind of gets us through the section of section 5. We're going to go ahead and look at part 6, which is service equipment disconnect means. Okay. And let's read it. This 23070 general means shall be provided to disconnect all ungrounded conductors in a building or other structure from service conductors. Ungrounded, that's all your hots. Remember, you have ungrounded, grounding, and grounded. Okay? Your intentionally grounded conductor is your neutral. And you have your grounding conductors, which are designed to be able to take the path of any shorts back to ground. So your ungrounded conductors are all going to be your hots. Okay, in a three-phase system, it'll be your black, your red, and your blue, not your white, not your green. Service disconnect means shall be installed in accordance with 23070A1, A2, and A3. First, number one, readily accessible location. Service disconnect means shall be installed in a readily accessible location, either outside of a building or structure or inside the nearest point of entrance of service conductors. That means that you can put this outside in a great big disconnect on the outside, or it can actually mean a breaker on the inside of a panel in a house. Service disconnect means shall not be installed in bathrooms. Don't put your service disconnect in the bathroom. You can't do that. And the remote control, where remote control devices used to actuate the service disconnect means the service disconnect means shall be located in accordance with 23070A1. Marking. Each service disconnect shall be permanently marked to identify it is a service disconnect. And suitable for use. Each service disconnect means shall be suitable for prevailing conditions. Service equipment installed in hazardous classified locations shall comply with the hazardous location requirements. That basically means if your disconnect is going outside, make sure it's a 3R disconnect. Make sure it's weather rated. If it's going in an explosion area, make sure it's the type of writing is top of boxes is proper. There's a whole lima classification that you'll go through further in the course. So let's look at 23071. This is one, as electricians, you'll hear us talk about 6 motions of the hand. And that's an old school reference of not having any more than 6 disconnecting means on a service itself. Now, multiple buildings have multiple services, but any one service to be able to shut down, you can't have any more than 6 disconnects that are tapped off of. So let's read this. For the general purpose of this selection, disconnect means installed as part of a listed equipment or used solely for following shall not be considered a disconnect means. If it's for a power monitoring equipment, surge protected device, control circuit of ground protection, or power operable service disconnecting means. Okay, so it's not considered a disconnect means. It falls under those. Most things will, though. 2 to 6 disconnect means. 2 to 6 services shall be permitted for each service permitted by 232. Each set of service conductors provided by 23040, exception of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5. The 2 to 6 service disconnect means shall be permitted to consist of the combination of any of the following. And we can read down through here. It's got to be a separate enclosure with a main disconnect. Main service disconnect means in each closure. Panel boards with the main service disconnect means in each panel enclosure. Switchboards, it's got with barriers provided in each vertical section to maintain an inverted contact. So you got to have separation. Service disconnects in switchgear, transfer switches, or metering centers, where each disconnect is located in a separate compartment. Metering centers. All of this is something you can read through this, and there's some exceptions here. Let's take a look at what this means. This is what we're talking about. Here is 23071, single disconnect in one enclosure. Okay. Service separate and main and disconnect means in each enclosure. So that covers one right there. 23071B. This one does not comply. Okay. Because it doesn't have the bus on it. 2 to 6 disconnects here for the taps. Now 23046 talked about our tap rules. We jumped over that a little bit. We'll go through that later. You can have one set of conductors tap multiple disconnects off of it. These are some fuse disconnect. This falls under B1 category with your grouping of 72A. Switchgear and 6 disconnects in a single meter and metering separate compartments. So this one actually covers a 74B or 71B4. And here's some of these switchboard disconnects in a vertical section, each section with vertical. So here's the barriers that they're talking about in between these vertical sections. And you'll see these in bigger pieces of, or in bigger load situation, plant type situations. Here's talking about the grouping of disconnects. The 2 to 6 disconnects if permitted in 23071 shall be grouped. Each disconnect shall be marked to indicate the load served on it. Again, you got to be able to make sure that you're grouping these things properly and you're identifying it properly. And I want you to continue to read through here. This is right. This is week 6, Monday lecture. This will be the last lecture I'm going to be giving this week. There'll be a lecture posted for Wednesday for the final day. There is no final in this course. I do want you to watch the video. I look forward to meeting every one of you in class at one point. We hope that you, if you're working over or you're going to be going to the Madison Heights campus, look for a guy, great big guy in overalls. You guys see my picture a couple of times. Again, I hope you've learned a little bit of something in the class. I hope that you've gotten a little bit more familiar with the book itself. It takes years to really master getting around in this book. And I've been doing this 25 years, a quarter of a century. And I still struggle sometimes. Unless you're in this book every day, and that's what your job is to look at this book. It's going to be a struggle. But understand, you can get through this. I have full faith in you to rock and move forward and go make all kinds of money and build the world. This has been your Hillbilly Professor. We thank you so very much.